Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott, to everybody who's listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, everybody who's watching on YouTube. Make sure that you not only enjoy the podcast, but make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're really excited to have you guys in on episode 182 as we are going to be discussing the Daytona 500. We'll get into the fact that I'm potentially breaking the curse of the Crash Kiss of Death. We'll also get into our IndyCar preview, as well as talk a little baseball at the end. That's why B. Scott's got his College World Series gear on right now, looking nice. I do, though, want to put B. Scott in the penalty box for the first little bit of this podcast, because after spending a week in Seattle with my toddler nieces and nephew, I'd finally gotten We Don't Talk About Bruno out of my head, and then here comes B. Scott from the top rope, putting it right back in there.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. That's just what I do. All I saw somebody post a status post something about it, and I was like, oh, great. Now I got that song stuck in my head. I had no idea that you knew that song. So when you started singing it, it caught me off guard.
Yeah. So now, basically, that's going to be the new podcast intro. Watch out for our rendition of the song coming soon on TikTok. It's going to be quite the scene. So it was a fun weekend. What we do talk about, that would have been a better transition, Craig, in retrospect. Yeah. What we do want to talk about is the Daytona 500. It was a fun weekend of racing. It got kicked off a little. I wish it didn't start at 2:30. I wish it started a little bit earlier, but nonetheless, you have to have all the pageantry and the glitz and the glamour. But starting off, you had stage one. Kaz Grala loses a tire, and then in an unrelated incident, Chase Briscoe spins on lap 43 to bring out the first caution of the day. Justin Haley has tire problems as well, bringing out the second caution of the race. And then with 3 to go in the stage, Harrison Burton is turned by Brad Keselowski. He collects Kyle Busch, William Byron, Alex Bowman, Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin. Also, Harrison Burton went for a pretty wild ride as well, as he ends up on his roof. And then Martin Truex is able to take stage 1. In stage 2, it was kind of a boring stage, to be honest. It was mainly all green flag racing in that middle portion of the race. Truex Jr. does now have Joey Logano at the line to take stage 2. And then in the final stage, as can be expected, that's when things got really interesting. With 50 laps to go, a crash takes out Joey Logano and Martin Truex. Then later, with 10 laps to go, Kevin Harvick is bumped by Kyle Larson. It causes a pileup involving those two, as well as Chase Elliott, David Gilliland, Noah Gragson, and Eric Jones. That brings out the red flag at lap 191. Then with 5 laps to go, I put this one on the broadcast booth. This was the textbook announcer's jinx, because they're talking to Ricky Stenhouse in his car during the red flag. And then with 5 laps to go, Ricky Stenhouse makes contact with Brad Keselowski and ends up collecting Chris Buescher in a
We shouldn't crash. Be surprised about that one, though. Ricky Stenhouse drives very haphazardly. He's a very good restrictor plate racer, but he's a very haphazardous restrictor plate racer. He pushes it almost too hard, and every year at Daytona or Talladega, mostly Daytona, he causes a big wreck. It's always Ricky Stenhouse, and you'll hear it year after year. Guys get out of their cars and go, I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know why he was driving that way. There's no reason to be trying to push it like that, even no matter what time of the race it is. And that's just Ricky Stenhouse for you. He's always going to run up there near the front, but he's also going to cause a wreck that's really going to shake things up.
And so there we had it, the green-white checkered finish. Austin Cindric goes post to post in the OT to capture his first career Cup win in his 8th start. Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, and Eric Almirola round out the top 5. So first and foremost, It was a wonky pick for sure. Dusty in the chat also picked Austin Cindric for this race. So we've got two people here who just put our thinking caps on and really dug deep, found a solution, and ended up finding the race winner in Austin Cindric. So really happy about that. The race overall was solid. I was a little worried early on with the back-to-back cautions for tires and a couple cars with hood flap issues. Thought that might be related to the next-gen car. You kind of wondered about that a little bit. But honestly, after those first couple of incidents, it was smooth sailing from there. And then, stage 1 and 3 were exciting, which is pretty typical. The middle was not the most entertaining, but that's never
always,
is. Yeah,
always. They just okay, we felt things out early on. Now we're just gonna ride, survive, and then it's balls to the wall in the final stage.
Right.
Really, if you want to watch good racing, if you're kind of on the edge of I'll watch the Daytona 500, or I try to get into racing. Don't watch stage 2 at all at a restrictor plate race. And even most of stage 3, tune in for the final 20 laps, because that final 20 laps is going to take 2 hours because of all the wrecking, and it gets really edge of your seat. So that's it. If you're wanting to kind of dip your toe into the racing world, that's my recommendation.
Now, we did get a very good GIF from the first wreck, the Kyle Busch fan yelling GFD. That was pretty funny in the stands. And my prediction, like I said, ended up happening. So all in all, a good Daytona 500. I will say I did feel super old because, and I think it's evidenced by the fact that I wrote his name down wrong and read it in the earlier race summary. I felt super old because Todd Gilliland, I confused him with David Gilliland. I was like, because look, for a long time, really up until the pandemic, I'd become kind of detached from NASCAR. Obviously I'm not as diehard as I used to be when I was a kid, but I've become more interested. I'm more willing to watch and keep track of it. And so I was. It's always fun to pick out people that you still recognize from when you paid more attention to the sport. And when I saw Todd Gilliland, I mistook him for David Gilliland. And I was like, oh, that's weird that he's still around. He wasn't that good when he drove the 38 car for, I think it was Roush Fenway. And I was like, whatever. That's kind of cool that he's still around. And then I was like, oh, that's Todd Gilliland, his son. So literally not the same person.
See, that one's not even that bad. It's now when Harrison Burton.
Right, yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I remember when Jeff Burton was a championship contender.
Well, I remember when Ward Burton won the Daytona 500. That.
And it's now it's I'm rooting for drivers' kids that I rooted for growing up. And it's that's when you start feeling old.
Right.
I remember watching Bill Elliott back when he drove the McDonald's car, and also back when he was teammates with Casey Kane. I forget that. Oh, they drove Dodge. Dodges.
It was for Evernham Motorsports.
Yep, Ray Evernham. Yeah. So yeah, that takes you. That shows you where I'm at. But it was. It was the Daytona 500.
Were you at the Brickyard that Bill Elliott won?
I was not. No.
That was one of the ones that happened before our family.
You know what? Going. I was not even in the country. I was in London when Bill Elliott won the Brickyard. So no, but I was there the following year when Casey Kane in the Ray Evernham cars went toe to toe with Tony Stewart. Really exciting race. But yeah, the Daytona 500, it's always exciting. The last few laps are always the best, like I said. And it seems like it's becoming a race that if you are a first-time race winner, it may go your way, it seems like. And, there's nothing wrong with that. The Fords, I will say, wow, awesome job by Ford. And whatever their race package was, they put together. They were super fast all weekend when they were bunched up together. Single car speed, Hendrick all day as normal, which does not bode well for the rest of the field for the rest of the season. But those Fords were locked in, all of them, and they all came in with a game plan together, which is a really good thing. Seeing Austin Cindric win was really cool, just because he's dominated the Xfinity series here as of late. So finally get to see him get his opportunity was really cool as well.
He was pretty good. I mean, he was like, it wasn't as if like, I know this isn't what you said, but like it's not as if he was just kind of like right place, right time, happened to be at the front when those last few wrecks happened. Like he was near the front all day. He didn't.
Oh, he was up near the front and all weekend. Right. Really, he was one of those guys that like, from the get-go you could go, okay, he has a legitimate shot. It wasn't just luck that got him there. I will say I'm surprised that, I'm always surprised when I see Kyle Busch get wrecked or involved in a wreck, and then he just all of a sudden reappears in like one of the like, contending for the race. It's like, wait, where did he come from? How did he fix his car and get all those laps back? Like, that's like, he's masterful when it comes to that. Seeing Chase Elliott, get involved in that like late wreck and then be able to turn it around and finish with a top 10. That's always great to see as well. I mean, I'm a Chase Elliott fan. I had another point, but sometimes it,
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It leaves you. But
I was excited to see Bubba Wallace have a good run too.
It's that is back-to-back runner-up finishes in the Daytona 500 for him.
Yeah, which, I mean, I was happy because, I mean, I think I've kind of adopted Bubba Wallace as my favorite driver. I think it was, because of, I think, a little bit of the iRacing stuff in 2020 when he was taking part in that. I was really excited that he got second. I guess it was probably a little bit made it better, the fact that my pick won, but I was like happy he finished second. Then he got out of the car. He's like, trying to think happy thoughts. I was like, oh man, I thought this was happy. Obviously you want to win it, but
you want to win the Daytona 500.
Well, right. But still, I mean, that's a great run.
I did remember my point. We do have to give a huge shout out of all the wrecking and all the cars that did not finish the race. One of the cars that did finish the race running, and I think he was like the last car running, but still got to give it up to Jacques Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Finishing that race. He got in, and good for him. He's an Indy 500 winner, correct?
Yeah, Indy 500 winner.
And a Formula One world champ. Yeah. I mean, this dude, good for him. Good for him making that attempt. And he didn't come in with the world's best equipment by far. His equipment was, we're going to get it. If we get in the race, we will be happy. And for him to actually finish the race.
Especially with how it started too, because he had some issues at the start.
He did. Yeah, he did have some issues. And for him to fight through that, I mean, that's the sign of a really good race car driver. And that's him.
Here's a replay of my reaction when they were giving the starting lineup and it got to 40th and I saw Jacques Villeneuve. Really? He's running this race? Because I didn't watch any of the duels or anything, so I didn't know that he what the whole field looked like, and I was like, wow, I love it, but that's so random. That's so absolutely random.
It's kind of like when you're looking at the starting lineup for the Indy 500 and you see Buddy Lazier in there, and it's like, he made it. He did.
Oh man. But yeah, good race overall.
Welcome back to the Biff.
Yes.
Greg Biffle. I know he's not running a lot of other races. I think this was a one-off thing, but hey, we got Greg Biffle back. Now we just need to get Carl Edwards back. Yeah, that's not happening, unfortunately.
No, I don't think it will, but yeah, it was a fun race. Good start to the season. Before we get into, because we're gonna do a season preview now for NASCAR and then get on to IndyCar. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about our friends of the show. First of all, we want to give a big shout out to Anchor. They allow us to put on the podcast every single week. Anchor.fm. It allows you to either upload to the website directly to put your podcast out there, or you can record. Or you can upload your own. You can upload your own files or record directly to it, and then once you upload the podcast, it distributes it to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. It's great for distribution. It keeps a log of all of your episodes, so you can go back through your archives. And it also allows you to monetize. They give you an anchor sponsorship right away, so you can get going to start growing and making and monetizing your podcast. So it's a really great website. It's where you can find the Hoosier High School Huddle, which is coming up on Friday, which is going to focus on high school sports. So really excited about that. And then remember that our podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game. That's a podcast put on by Adam Collins. He basically tells how board games make a difference as far as building relationships and networking and stuff like that. It can really bring people together. He has guests on every week talking about new games every week, so make sure you go check that out. So it's time for our season previews now for NASCAR. First we'll do NASCAR, then we'll do IndyCar. So for NASCAR, brief kind of off-season cliff notes here. Brad Keselowski joins Roush Fenway in the number 6 car, now Roush Fenway Keselowski. Kurt Busch joins 2311 Racing. Austin Cindric replaces Brad Keselowski at Penske. And Harrison Burton, son of Jeff and nephew of Ward, is in the Wood Brothers number 21. Schedule changes. Auto Club Speedway returns. That's California. That's where they'll be at this next weekend. And then June 5th, they will be at Gateway. So, as far as like what I'm looking forward to the most this season, I'm really, for one, just to kind of, bring the hometown, home state, twist to it. I am excited for NASCAR to return to the Indy Road Course after last season's fiasco. Like we said back then, I don't think it's going to be something. I don't think it's something that we're going to necessarily have to worry about. I hope we don't have to worry about it because, ultimately, if it ends up being something that's too bad, if it ends up being a fiasco this year too, and then maybe one more shot before they're like, yeah, we might actually be done at Indy because this was our gimmick to keep it at Indy while not having to race on the oval. So if something were to happen there, that would really be bad, but I don't think it will. I think I'm confident in IMS's ability to rectify those issues and get things all tightened up and better. So I'm really excited to see them go back to the Indy Road Course here later this summer. I do wish that they kept the Daytona Road Course on the schedule. I would love to have seen that maybe instead of the second race on the oval, so maybe see the Coke Zero 400 run on that track instead. Maybe not 400 because I don't know how big that track is, so that may take a while.
That'd be a long, that's an endurance race.
That'd be the Coke Zero, I don't know, Coke Zero at Daytona, like Coke Zero Grand, we'll call them Grand Prix in NASCAR, but whatever. They'd figure out something. And then, so those are my kind of comments about the schedule, but I'm also interested to see what Kyle Larson has in store for an encore. He won 10 races a year ago, as well as the championships. 5 drivers in the last 30 years have won 10 races in a season, and in that following season for those drivers, they averaged 9 wins, an average points finish of second with 3 titles, all of which from Hendrick Motorsports, which is where Larson drives out of. Those were with Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon, and there have been a total, so if that average holds up and Kyle Larson does win 9 races, 34 championships have been won with 9 or more race wins. So, you talk about, a lot of sports, you talk about, it's really tough, to win back-to-back championships. And it still is. It's not that Kyle Larson is a shoo-in by any means, but at the same time, you talk about, no sort of lull. A lot of teams, a lot of drivers come back, really good that next season. Kyle Larson could be poised to make another fantastic season happen, and I'm really excited to see what he does. I'm also interested to see if Joe Gibbs or Penske can finally surpass Hendrick. Hendrick Motorsports have won the last 2 titles. Larson this past year, he was ahead of, as well as Chase Elliott were in the Final 4, representing Hendrick with Martin Truex and Denny Hamlin from Joe Gibbs. And then in 2020, Elliott won the title. 2 of the 4 in the Final 4 were from Penske. So you have these other 2 teams that are kind of right there, but just haven't been able to surpass Hendrick as far as winning the title. Of course, they did win the title in 2019 with Kyle Busch. So interested to see if any of those things can happen, if Penske can maybe surpass, or even Joe Gibbs can maybe surpass Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah, I think the key for that, honestly, is going to be which team gets the quickest handling on the next gen car. This new car, which team figures it out and figures out how to get the most out of it. early on. And honestly, I mean, it's tough. It is a tough read off of the Daytona 500 because that's just a different animal than like Auto Club, where we'll be next week, or Texas, or wherever. I mean, it's Atlanta. It's those are very similar. So it's going to be interesting to see that. I think that's, for me, that's the biggest thing I'm looking to, at how quickly do these drivers adapt. And honestly, because it's a whole new car and everything, you would think, oh, it's going to level the playing field. But honestly, I mean, yeah, I think it will for most, but I do think it also does set up Kyle Larson to have another really great year, because look, this is a guy that he can get out of one car, get in another, and go dominate another series real quick. I mean, right now, I think it'd be a consensus would step up and say Kyle Larson probably right now is considered one of, if not the best race car driver in the entire world. I mean, maybe one of, because, in Formula One, they always have their say. But it's, I don't know. I just feel like because of his ability to get out of a stock car, then get into a USAC car and win, or get into a late model car and win in a dominating fashion. I mean, it's just, for him, he's just a natural racer. And this new car, I think he'll take a quick handling to it, which in turn will help the rest of Hendrick Motorsports. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Chase Elliott right back there again. It's going to be an interesting year, especially with the moves that were made in the offseason, with a lot of big name drivers going different places. I am interested to see Keselowski and how he works at Roush Fenway, or at Roush. And it's like that team has been kind of non-existent really here as of late. So Keselowski coming in and adding a little bit of, new blood to them may help them. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that team can can reemerge. Then you got Penske that, with Austin Cindric, who is a really good race car driver in his own right. So I think this year we could potentially see one of the more competitive years. And then you can't sleep on the old guys like Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. I mean, they're still going to be around. Martin Truex is just consistently solid. So I think some of this new young blood will shake things up a little bit. But when push comes to shove, I think honestly, in the end, I'll even go ahead and make a prediction of your final four. Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick. I'm going to say Brad Keselowski. That's going to be your final four this year. I have a strong feeling about it.
Well, if that happens for Brad Keselowski, that would be the first time that Roush Fenway had been in the top fives in like 10 years. Pretty crazy to think about. Because that's a team that used to have like Mark Martin, Carl Edwards, like they used to be, some of the best of the best. Yeah, I mean, I did think though, before you said Brad Keselowski, I did think you were gonna go full all in on me and say Austin Cindric in the top four, which I mean I think he'll be in the play. I mean, I guess he's already in the playoffs, right? Because he won a race. So yeah. I mean, he's gonna make some waves that way. But it'll be interesting to see how he navigates. Because do they have a playoff in Xfinity, or is it just straight points?
I think they have a playoff. I don't know. I honestly I can't speak on that because I don't follow that too much.
I don't either. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, with those final four. But yeah, you mentioned a prediction, so let's go ahead and get into our predictions for what we think is going to happen for the NASCAR season. We're going to pick a champion, a dark horse, and then rookie of the year. I'll just go ahead and give mine, then you give yours, B. Scott. Now I will say this: I like my dark horse and rookie of the year picks a whole lot more than my championship picks. Not necessarily because I don't think the championship pick's going to happen. I just it's
just too easy.
Yeah, I just kind of went boring.
But I would say rookie of the year at this point's too easy.
True. So for my championship pick, I do think Kyle Larson is going to win the title this year. He'd be the first back-to-back champion since Jimmy Johnson's had that streak of championships. I don't think that'll happen, but I don't know. Really?
I honestly, I wouldn't be, I don't think it's going to be to the extent
Like six
that
straight.
Jimmy Johnson, yeah, I don't think it could be that dominant, but it could border pretty close.
Well, I mean, especially when you have the playoff system. I mean, it's not like other playoffs where you know have to deal with a whole bunch of other things. It's just basically going out, and I mean, yeah, I guess you could endure, you be caught up in a wreck or have a mechanical
Well, because
failure or something like that.
if you look at him, the only races that he did not win last year were restrictor plate. He won at every different kind of track.
Well, the road courses they ran 7, and like he and Chase Elliott like split them all basically.
Except Indy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it'll be, as far as that, Jimmy Johnson, was a lot, was out of Hendrick too, which is where Kyle Larson comes out of. Yeah, I mean, once you get in the playoffs, I mean, it's not, like I said, not to say that it's easy to navigate, but it's just it can get kind of into that rhythm of like, okay, once we're in the playoffs, then we can. Not that he'll do that. I mean, he'll attack the season like normal, but once you can start to get in a rhythm and navigate that, that's how you can get to 6 straight championships, which is not necessarily what the sport needs, but and it's hard to argue with all those stats coming off of 10-win seasons where you see just how much success drivers have had when having a dominant season and coming back and having a strong season, and the lowest total in that number was 8 wins by Rusty Wallace in '93. So that's pretty incredible. My dark horse, kind of going off of you a little bit with your Final Four. I'm going with Brad Keselowski. Roush Fenway has been a non-factor for 10 years, essentially. That 5th place finish in the points was Greg Biffle in 2012. Adding a driver like Keselowski, who has a championship background, could really be a shot in the arm for that team. Can bring them back, maybe not necessarily to, being in really strong championship contention, but definitely put them back, in position to do some great things. And then my rookie of the year prediction is going to be, I mean, I'm going to double down. Why not? Austin Cindric.
Yeah, that's the easy one,
right?
To be honest.
Him, Todd Gilliland, and Harrison Burton are the best candidates, I think, and I think winning the 500 pretty much, as long as he doesn't like DNF the next 10 races, like I think he's got it.
See that happening.
No. So as long as something catastrophic doesn't happen, I think he's looking pretty good to win Rookie of the Year this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, you also got to look at the equipment that he has under him. I mean,
yeah, this isn't like
that. Not like that 2 car's been a slouch for the past 10 years. I mean, it's
right. Well, and I mean, it's not like, because I mean, we had our second straight first time like NASCAR winner win the Daytona 500. It's apples and oranges compared to how those 2 different wins, because like Michael McDowell, doesn't in any way, shape, or form have the same capabilities that Austin Cindric has with Penske. So like it's going to be an entirely different season, because Michael McDowell won the 500 last year and we didn't really hear anything from him since, because typically, I mean, that's why restrictor plate races are such a crapshoot, because you just kind of have to be around at the end and then things can break your way.
Yeah. So I'm going right with you on the champion. It's Kyle Larson. Like I said earlier, he's one of, if not the best race car driver in the world right now. The guy can get it, like I said, he can get in any type of car, it seems like, and just go and win races. That's why I really, 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 really want to see him run an Indy 500. I think that could be very entertaining, and would not be shocked to see him actually win the thing, because it's just, I don't know. It's just, he's just a really good race car driver. My dark horse, this is a tough one. I like, you should be like, oh, but you said Brad Keselowski making the Final Four. But Brad Keselowski as a driver, really, I wouldn't look at it too much as a dark horse, just because he's a talented driver. I mean,
it'd only be a dark horse from the sense
of what team he's on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this was a guy that was originally pegged to jump into Hendrick Motorsports until they went out and signed, they brought in Mark Martin instead. And it was a long time ago, but he was driving originally, and it was like setup that he was going to move in eventually into Hendrick Motorsports. And then because of some other moves that Hendrick made, they ended up not bringing him on up, and the rest is history. But I'm going to go, I don't really have a reason. I just feel like he's a name that you hear a lot of up near the front here as of late, and it could relay into actually him having a successful year. But Chris Buescher,
I like that.
I don't have a much more reason than, once you start hearing somebody's name a lot during broadcasts in a good way and not because they wrecked or anything, it's a good sign that you're progressing forward in your abilities and in your career. So I wouldn't be surprised for him to make some noise in the playoffs.
I like that.
Make the playoffs and make some noise in it.
I like that too, in the sense that like it goes off of that Roush Fenway connection, in the sense that he will be able to share information with Brad Keselowski. And we don't mean to paint Brad Keselowski as this, patron saint of racing by any means, but at the same time, like being able to,
he's a really good veteran presence.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been around,
right? And that's I think what would be really helpful to a driver like Chris Buescher, because I can't even. I mean, I know that like. I don't know how the timelines interact and overlap with how long Chris Buescher has been there, but I know like in the past they've had like Ryan Newman in there and drivers like that who are veteran presence, but this is a veteran presence who has been successful here recently, who can really help turn that. I mean, and I wouldn't think he would want to put a stake in the ownership if he didn't believe in what they have as in their technology and what they're able to do. So I mean, picking a driver from that stable, I think is a good pick in that position.
And then Rookie of the Year, Austin Cindric. I mean, it's an uphill climb for everybody else at this point, a significant uphill climb. And then we've seen how Austin Cindric can run on road courses. I mean, he's grown up around racing.
Yeah.
And we're seeing these guys that have grown up around it, like seriously grown up around it. They've had some pretty good success.
Yeah, for sure. I really wanted I thought about like I toyed around with picking Harrison Burton too. I think he's gonna have a good season, but it's not gonna compare to what Austin Cindric had by any means.
Yeah, Austin Cindric really could honestly. Well, I mean he's in the playoffs, but I think he could maybe advance one round, and it wouldn't be shocking. I mean, honestly, if I wasn't already picking him for my Rookie of the Year, I could have picked him potentially as a dark horse. When I'm looking at a dark horse, I'm not saying I don't think this guy is dark horse to win the championship. I'm looking at it as a dark horse to make some noise and be competitive within the playoff structure.
Well, and I think that I mean, that makes sense because
most of the guys that are contending for a championship are not dark horses. I mean, honestly, when push comes to shove, it's going to be a handful of drivers that are true, legitimate championship contenders. Now, I don't think I would have expected the wheels to fall off of Kevin Harvick like they did last year. But when push comes to shove, I still have to stay with Kyle Larson. But yeah, when I look at my dark horse, I'm looking at somebody that's going to make noise and be competitive throughout the playoff structure rather than, as a secondary pick for a champion.
And I understand that because I thought of like when I was thinking dark horses, I thought like, oh, Truex won like both stages, but like he just won a title like a few years ago and he races for Joe Gibbs. So like that's a driver you could see potentially winning the championship this year. And not to say that you have to pick, a driver near the back to be your dark horse, but if you were thinking they were going to be the champion, like if they had a pretty good shot at it, you wouldn't put them as your dark horse. You would be considered, and they'd be in the championship conversation for you. So let's go ahead now and switch gears to the NTT IndyCar series. Their offseason, a little bit of a synopsis here. Simon Pagenaud and Elio Castroneves, they make up Meyer-Shank Racing. Wow. I know, right? Incredible.
Sorry, Jack Harvey. They've upgraded.
Upgrades. Romain Grosjean now driving full-time for Andretti Autosport. Takuma Sato to Dale Coyne. Which, I mean, hey, if he ends up going somewhere else after that, I mean, that seems to be the breeding ground for where you go to be successful and get with another. I mean, we saw that with Alex Palou. And then you have Jack Harvey now as a Ray Hall Letterman to make that now a 3-car operation.
You also forgot, you did not put this one in the lineup, but Connor Daly has moved full time to the 20 car. He will be running every race in the 20 car. He won't be splitting time with Ed Carpenter. So in the past, Connor ran street and road courses in the 20. Ed Carpenter ran ovals, and then they put Daly into, I think it was like the 22 or some other number of car for the 500, and Carpenter would run the 20. Whereas this year it's going to be the other way around. Daly will run the 20 full schedule, and Carpenter will run a different car for the 500.
Yeah, that's what was going to be my next question, because I was like, well, Ed Carpenter's still going to try to go for the 500, right?
Oh yeah,
so.
Yeah. He's done racing like Gateway and Texas, and he's had enough of that. But Indy is like the one place he knows he can still be semi-successful, and even though he really hasn't been here as of like the past couple of years. And finally somebody gave Connor Daly a shot, a legitimate full-time shot. I mean, this is a guy that can never get much consistency because nobody would give him that chance for consistency. And I'll get bored. But good for Connor to get into that full-time ride finally, and one that run by an Indiana guy, and one I think he could have lots of success with.
For sure. Schedule changes, Iowa returns, Toronto returns. We're very, very happy for that. Now looking at as far as like what we look forward to the most about this season, for me, Meyer Shank is a sneaky team. I mean, it's basically just been Jack Harvey for the team's existence. And I think we can agree that Simon Pagenaud and Elio Castroneves are upgrades there. I think our reaction earlier was pretty good.
Jack Harvey is a very good race car driver.
Right, yeah. It's not to poo-poo on him. It's just to basically say those drivers are upgrades. It's just like you would say, like I thought this past season, except for the last month, Carson Wentz was a passable quarterback, but it doesn't mean I think he's better than Tom Brady. It just means that, it's a little bit of an upgrade at that
what
position.
Makes them sneaky good is that Pagenaud and Castroneves work really well together. So much so that they were on the winning team together, winning drivers for Meyer Shank Racing at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. So watch out. These guys, I mean, they're former Penske guys. They're both Indy 500 winners. This is going to be a fun team to watch.
They really are. I mean, you've got Pagenaud, who has a championship background, coming from Penske, like you said. I think he'll have kind of a chip on his shoulder. Not that he necessarily has any bad blood, but just from the standpoint of...
That is like one of the nicest guys you could possibly meet in the paddock. So
right. So it's not like he's going to have...
He's going to race. He's going to race with a chip on his shoulder. Like, he may push it a little bit more than he has in the past, but
right.
He doesn't hold any bad blood to anybody.
Oh, not at all. And then Elio is literally 1-for-1 with the team. He won winning the Indy 500 last year, so pretty incredible. I'm also excited for the first full season of Jimmy Johnson. Look, I know that he ran, not the greatest. He did his first 6 races last season. He ran 12. His average finish was 22nd. The final 6 races, his average finish was 20th. And he finished 17th twice. So I mean, he was getting better.
And he only ran street and road courses.
Right. Yeah.
And those were not his biggest strength.
Yeah, and
in NASCAR even. So
right, and so
I'm interested. I'll be interested to see him in Indy.
And on those lines, I mean, he will race the ovals, this year, so that adds that to the mix, including literally race number 2 at a track he's familiar with in Texas. I mean, obviously the cars will run differently, but at least he knows, how to get around there. So. That'll be fun to watch. And then, as always, I mentioned, I think every time we talk about Iowa, I'm just glad it's back on the schedule. It's one of my favorite tracks outside of...
Why did it go away? I didn't think it went away.
I think it did go... It was off.
I mean, I know Toronto went away just because of COVID. They couldn't race there.
It wasn't on the schedule last year, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it was.
All right, well...
Or maybe they were repaving it or something.
Maybe.
I don't know. Because I was like, I didn't think we missed it.
Here, go ahead and give us your things to watch, and I'll look that
up. For me, like I said, I'm really excited to see Connor Daly in a full-time ride. I think the consistency will finally allow him to gain some more chemistry with a team and allow him. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see him actually win a race this year. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see him win the Indy 500 this year. I'm just going to put that out there. But like you said, Meyer Shank is going to be a sneaky good team. And it's going to sneak up on a lot of, they're definitely going to sneak up on people this year. The other one to really look out for again is McLaren Aero. They've put together a nice little team there, and McLaren in general is pumping a lot more money into that team after they saw the success that they had last year with Pato O'Ward. So be on the lookout for that team. That team is now making the next step, in my opinion, into that upper echelon of the big time names like the Penske's, the Ganassis. So don't sleep too much on them. One driver I'm really interested in watching this year is Alexander Rossi. I want to see if he can bounce back. He just hasn't been the Alexander Rossi that we've come to know the past 2 seasons. And it's really interesting. I wonder if the shakeup at Andretti may help him out a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out. But those are kind of some of the things I'm interested in looking at. I do think we will see a first-time winner at some point this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it's early on.
Jimmy Johnson in Texas. Let's go.
Jimmy Johnson, I do think, because driving for Ganassi at Indy, I think he's going to be somebody to keep an eye on there on the oval, because which is funny, because he said that was one of the toughest tracks for him, and yet he's won a lot of races there. But for Jimmy Johnson at Indy, it was always boom or bust for him. But I'm excited to see him actually run full time this year. I'm especially on the ovals, because that's his background. And I don't know, it could be interesting. I am interested to see if Ganassi does continue their streak of championships. Going into this next bit, I'm going to say no, but this is going to be one of the most competitive years in IndyCar. And it's not, I mean, I don't know. It also very well could be an Alex Palou running away with it again type deal, but who knows? I honestly am leaning more towards this is going to be a very, very competitive year. I mean, last year seemed very competitive in itself as well, but I feel like this year it could be more so. I think we could see, going into that last race, we could see 3 or 4 drivers right there within striking distance of winning that championship.
One final note on Jimmy Johnson is also the fact that we don't know, as far as where on the totem pole that team was getting, as far as like what equipment and what, you're obviously using Chip Ganassi equipment, but like, obviously I don't think you're giving your primo stuff to, a rookie driver who's only running certain races to get his like toe in the water either. So he may have his hands on a little bit of better equipment this year as well to run.
Mm-hmm.
Not to put, obviously, you're 20th every race. That are mostly on you, but at the same time, like I'm interested to see like what kind of improvement he's there.
Well, yeah, and also, honestly, I feel like when you looked at the numbers, he was running significantly slower than everybody else, and I think that had nothing to do with equipment. I think that was him just figuring out the car,
right?
To be honest, and I think now that he's got that last year underneath his belt, you're going to see better results out of him because he's going to be more comfortable in that car. Ganassi is Ganassi. They honestly, outside of them and Penske, have the best equipment, hands down, between the two of them. So I don't see like Chip Ganassi going, you're not running a full season. You can have what's left over, but
right. But if we're talking about getting the best cars and best equipment and best guys on the job, try to figure things out, you're not going to be like, I know you're leading the championship, Alex Palou, but let's go ahead and focus all of our time into Jimmy Johnson and figure out what's going.
I do believe Dario Franchitti did a lot of work with Jimmy Johnson last year, but that's also because that's his job too. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting. I think this is going to be a fun year for IndyCar. I'm super excited, and I love the fact that it's starting just 1 week after NASCAR. Seems like in the past it's like been weeks
In the middle of March.
after. Yeah, and so I'm just super pumped that it's like it's here. It's this weekend. We go to St. Pete this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So moving into our predictions, and again, similar thing. My my championship pick isn't super sexy, but I'm more into my other picks as well for dark horse and rookie of the year. So as far as predictions go, my championship pick is Scott Dixon. He's won every other year since 2018. When we mentioned him on the pod, we get a big influx of listeners. So thank you guys, Scott Dixon, Scott Dixon, Scott Dixon. I same reason I picked Newgarden last year. He won 2017 and 2019. So I was like, well, hey, if we're going with trends. Now Palou won the title with Ganassi last season. All the talk has been about young guns versus veterans. So we talk about kind of chip on your shoulder again. Not that Scott Dixon is a prediction.
Scott Dixon has nothing to prove.
Yeah, no, well, I know that, but I mean, if he's looking for extra motivation, I mean, look at it. I mean, he's coming off a season where he only won one race, which was preceded by a season that he won what seemed like every weekend. And all the talk has been like, oh, okay, well, now there's Alex Palou, who's kind of the new kid on the block, the new guy at Chip Ganassi. He wins the championship, and not just wins it, but wins it in relatively dominant fashion. So now you're like, oh man, I may not be the best driver right now at my own team. So I mean, again, like we're not talking about people that are like angry, fire and brimstone. But if you need some extra motivation, I mean, I think it's definitely there. So yeah. By the way, his one win last season is the fewest win total he's had since 2017. Which guess what he did the following year? Win the championship in 2018. So that's kind of what I'm going on. I'm gonna go with Scott Dixon. I'm going to drive this every other year thing until it finally runs into the ground. So when someone else wins it this year, that trend will officially be over, and I can back off of it. But I'm not letting it die yet. As far as dark horse goes, I am going to go with, he's been kind of my dark horse pick ever since our last, when we did our podcast about the last race last season. It's Romain Grosjean. He's driving for Andretti Autosport this season, a team primed for a revival as far as the top of the sport goes, kind of similar to Roush Fenway, where, it's a team that you recognize. It's a team you're like, oh yeah, I remember when those guys were at the top of the sport, and yet it's been a while since they've been there. He had 3 podium finishes for Dale Coyne last season. He finished 5th at Road America. He finished 15th in points despite skipping 3 races. And I understand 15th in points isn't great when you're talking about like up to about 20th or 21st. You're talking about, but because really there's only like 20, 22 cars that are given a race usually. So when you talk 15th in points, that's not great. But at the same time, the next 6 drivers in the standings all ran full schedules. So despite missing 3 races, he still put up, better seasons than the guys that were behind him. That's something.
He's a driver that probably should not be here right now. If you want to see it, YouTube Romain Grosjean at, I think it was the Dubai Grand Prix. Dude literally drove his car into and underneath a metal barrier and caught on fire and had trouble getting out for a while.
Oh my gosh.
You need to look that up. It was his last race in Formula One. Burnt both of his hands severely.
You're talking. I thought you meant like, for some reason I thought you meant like, I didn't hear you say like it was like he was racing. I thought you meant he was like at an event and that happened.
No, he was racing.
Jeez, that's wild. Rookie of the year for me is going to be Kyle Kirkwood. He won 10 of 19 races in Indy Lights. last season en route to a title, 14 podium finishes, and he won 4 of the last 5 races. So, I mean, as much as I kind of wanted to go, the other way and pick some of the other drivers that are, in the
Who are
mix.
some of the other drivers even that are rookies? I mean,
I know.
It's so tough, like because some of
Delvin
these guys.
DiFrancesco, Christian Lundgaard. That's who I was looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going. There's like Tatiana, I forget what her last name is, who's running like all but one race. Yeah, so I mean, it's just hard when you have a resume of like, hey, I literally almost won the entire schedule. It's hard to not it's hard to not go with him. Also, he liked one of our other IndyCar posts on
there you go.
on Instagram. So I mean, look,
friend of the show.
We're friend of the show, Kyle Kirkwood. I mean, come on the show. We'd love to have you. So yeah, I'm going with Kyle Kirkwood as my rookie of the year.
Yeah, I'll start with my rookie of the year. I agree, it's going to be Kyle Kirkwood. Not knowing too much else about the other drivers, Kyle Kirkwood, I mean, he's ready, and I think it'll be interesting to see. I think he could be one of those guys that could spoil somebody's day that needs a win and he steals it from them, or needs a podium and he steals it from them. So my champion, I am actually going to go with Colton Herta. I don't know why. I just feel like this is his time. I think this, if he wants to win a championship in IndyCar, I think it's now or never. Because to be honest, with the news that Andretti is starting a Formula One team, I think starting in 2023, I would not be surprised to see Colton Herta in that car as a Formula One driver. So I think this is a now or never type deal. And this is also a good auditioning point still for Herta to show him that, hey, I can do that. Look, I won you a championship. Now put me over in the Formula One car. I don't know. He's been kind of one of those drivers that you just feel like he's knocking on that door. And I think he finally steps through. I don't know why. I just have this gut feeling that it's going to be Colton Herta. My dark horse, I don't know if you can really consider this one a dark horse, like my NASCAR pick, but I'm going to say Pato O'Ward. Yeah, I know he led the series for a couple of races last year, but I just feel like with the money that McLaren is dumping into this team, and like I said, they're only going to get better. Their equipment's only going to get better. I just feel like Pato has the ability to really take that next step. And I don't know, if it wasn't for such a dominating year from Alex Palou, I think Pato O'Ward would have been your champion last year. And I think that's going to drive him a little bit more. I don't know why I'm saying he's a dark horse then, but I don't know. I just feel like he's not a name that everybody's looking at. Everybody's thinking, Palou and Dixon, obviously. And then a lot of people are saying Colton Herta. So I'm going to go with Pato O'Ward as a dark horse. It's
one of those things, I think, because a lot of people, I think, going into this, like coming off of last season, Pato O'Ward probably would have been, the topic of conversation as far as drivers who could maybe win next year, or this season coming up. But yeah, I think with all the things that have kind of happened in the off season, all the moves and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of the buzz just isn't on him anymore. And I think that's kind of why you're not really hearing him in the mix as far as people who are predicting him to win a championship.
Yeah. So those are my picks. Kirkwood, Rookie of the Year. Dark Horse, Pato O'Ward, Champion, Colton Herta.
I really like that Colton Herta pick. I feel like we switched bodies for a minute because mine's a little bit more close to the vest and yours is kind of out there a little bit. But I think, out there as far as like, it's not maybe somebody last season you would have thought, would have been in the.
I probably could have switched my dark horse and my champion.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Would have been a better fit.
You made up for it. It's fine. It works out. So I'm really excited for this season. Like you said, I think it's good that they're capitalizing off of like, hey, there was a lot of buzz last week for the Daytona 500. Now you get to watch IndyCar this week because they are returning to Fontana for NASCAR. But I think more eyes might be on. Or at least general racing fans might be more keen on the first race of the IndyCar season. So I think it's good to capitalize on that. So we'll see. Excited to have St. Pete back at the top of the schedule. Excited to see that race again. By the way, before we switch over to baseball, The last time they raced at Iowa was 2020, so that's probably why it feels like it wasn't that long ago. Well, one, because it wasn't, but also two, because the last 2 years have kind of run together. So it makes sense to be like, well, I don't know, but yeah, Iowa has been on the schedule. It was taken off last year and then it was put back on. It's one of my favorite races, and I'm really excited it's back. Something I can't be excited about it coming back, at least not for now, is Major League Baseball.
Long way off. Way off.
Oh yeah. So it's not necessarily. I mean, it's a bad header that I have here. I have baseball is back, kind of, as our header for this next topic here. An update on the MLB lockout. Spring training officially delayed through March 5th. The MLB and MLBPA plan to meet every day this week until Friday, with the 28th as a loose deadline. They have agreed to universal DH, a draft lottery, and teams are able to sign players with no risk of losing picks. In the past, if a team extended a qualifying offer to a free agent and they declined it, then the team that did sign that player would lose a draft pick. So, for instance, Freddie Freeman was given a qualifying offer by the Braves. He declined it. So, under the old CBA, if the Yankees were to sign him, then the Yankees would lose a draft pick. So, as far as my thoughts on it, I mean, I was optimistic at the beginning of the week. As each passing day passes, I consistently feel less optimistic. The reason I'm optimistic is that there's a soft deadline in place. The changes they have decided on have all been good, though the sides seem pretty far apart. I don't want to see expanded playoffs, although that looks like it's coming. So I'm not super excited about that. But all my optimism goes away once March hits, because people forget, not only do they have to then negotiate the new CBA, but they also have to decide how many games they're playing. Will they do expanded playoffs?
We all know that's not easy.
Right, exactly, because that literally was a situation where they probably could have played at least 90 games in 2020, and they ended up only playing 60. So, you have that. And then plus, once that happens, they have to decide what they're doing for spring training, what's going to happen. So, I mean, there's just a whole other thing that has to be decided upon, and we know how well things are going. The most recent update I got on my phone was that the two sides feel further apart, and that was via the MLB. The MLB said that they felt further apart, which in my opinion means that the MLBPA actually probably made progress towards some of the things they want and need. Because that's the thing that I think I hate the most, is just hearing, I mean, I know they're casual fans, I know they're fans from a different era, but just seeing the people that are mad at the owners, or mad at the players instead of the owners, when for one, MLB didn't have to do the lockout. They could have just operated under the old CBA until there was a new one. They didn't have to lock the teams out. And also, I mean, look, I get it. Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, those are the faces of the sport. Those are, Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, all those guys. They make ungodly amounts of money and are at the top of the sport. But at the same time, they're what the MLBPA partially is fighting for is those guys in minor leagues who have played 7 seasons. They're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They're
working full time while also playing baseball full time,
right?
Because they're only making like $18,000 a year.
So people only hear about what Garrett Cole's in part of a lockout, he makes $330 million, whatever. And it's like, that's not who we're worried about. We're worried about the minor leaguers who are making, pennies on the dollar, to try to pursue their dream. And that's what gets lost in a lot of this, is that, these guys have to have given their whole lives to this sport and have to try to make as much as they can, and want to make as much as they can, ideally before retiring 30 years before the rest of us, and having to make that money last the rest of their lives. So, it's just unfortunate. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm hoping it, like I said, I'm about half optimistic. We're halfway through the week. They're giving it a week, so I'm about half optimistic about this deal getting done. But seeing as how they're seemingly farther apart, I'm not super excited about that.
Yeah, I'm not too optimistic, just because when the owners came out and said we have to postpone the start of training camp or start of spring training and the spring training games, and then the players turn around and say, you didn't have to do that. You chose to do that. Just like you chose to lock us out. Like you said, they could have gone on with the current CBA and until they came into a new one, but the owners chose to lock out the players. I feel like this is an issue that is it's been brewing for a while. And it's been and it really kind of started rearing its head during the COVID shutdown. And I think the way that was handled left both sides kind of feeling angst towards each other. And this was only a matter of time. I think because of how that COVID shutdown was handled is what's also not giving me too much optimism, because they took forever to come to an agreement on how they were going to play and how many games they were going to play and the rules surrounding that. And that could have been super simple, to be honest. And because of how long and drawn out they made it and how complex they made it, I don't have too much faith that this is going to be resolved anytime shortly. Could it be resolved by April? Oh, I think it could. It could. Really what it's going to come down to is when the owners start losing money, that's when they will come closer to where the MLBPA is and what they're wanting, because the whole issue is the owners and their money. And the owners are like, no, that's not it. That's not it at all. And then once the owners start losing money, that's when they're like, okay, we're ready to really talk now. So I don't think it's going to be a full season or even a half season thing. I mean, it's going to be a much shortened season. Let's just put it that way. It just seems like when the MLB gets to these points, it just gets ugly.
Well, it doesn't help when your commissioner literally doesn't like the sport. So, I mean,
that's true.
when your commissioner could not give two craps about the sport, that's when it's all going to go downhill. And the problem is, and I've heard it a lot on Talking Baseball, which is a podcast I listen to quite a bit. Both sides think that missing games is their bargaining chip. So both sides are willing to play chicken until the other one decides it doesn't want to miss any more games. So yeah, that's what'll definitely grease the wheels. But I'm not one of those people that thinks it's gonna be like July before we see games, but especially because this will be the first full season for most teams, or not necessarily for most teams, but because did all stadiums open at capacity last season? I can't remember, but I don't think
Pretty
so.
Sure they did.
No. They didn't, because remember everybody was showing off Texas because they were the only ballpark that was, and
yeah,
of course they were. But
hey, and I'll tell you. I mean, once you wrap up, I got something to say.
Go ahead.
I will tell you, Texas ballpark is hopping. It's been hopping. Whether it was a wrestling duel a couple of weeks ago between Oklahoma State and Iowa, and the U.S. and what was supposed to be Iran, but just a bunch of random international wrestlers, or college baseball.
Yeah, and that is perfect. I like how you teed that up, because that's what we're going to get into. Because what can you do in the meantime? I mean, there's no Major League Baseball. There's no spring training.
There's still baseball.
There's still baseball. And if you look at B. Scott's shirt, that's all you need to know. The college baseball is underway. Texas opens up the #1 team in the country, the reigning champion Mississippi State.
First time ever that they were the #1 team. That shocked me too.
Yeah, I was like, that's really wild.
First time ever they opened up the season as the #1 team.
Right. Mississippi State is #7 in the most recent rankings, and Notre Dame is #13. So, should the lockout be extended, what team are you keeping an eye on? For me, it's the #15 Arizona Wildcats. I'm so glad that you mentioned Texas Ballpark, because that's where they just were at Globe Life Field.
Played some really good games, and Texas Tech, Auburn, Kansas State. That was a heck of a weekend. Then I think today, we're recording on a Tuesday. Oklahoma State was playing there today,
right?
Against Sam Houston.
You've got, they swept the State Farm Baseball Showdown this past weekend. They scored 35 runs, allowed 12, won 8-6 over Kansas State, won 14-4 over Oklahoma, and then won 13-2 over number 14 Texas Tech. They're led by former big league manager, former Arizona Diamondbacks manager Chip Hale. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, you're looking
but
first.
Arizona, you also got to look at it. Like, this is interesting because in college, it's not managers, it's coaches. And they lost their head coach from last year. He is now the head guy at LSU, and going with him was their best player, Jacob Berry. He's now at LSU as well. So for Arizona to start the season off the way they did and looking to get back to Omaha, it was a great start for them. I mean, especially against Texas Tech. Texas Tech was one of those teams that was knocking on the door of getting to Omaha last year and probably had one of the better super regionals against Stanford last year, who did get to Omaha. So yeah, it was a great start for Arizona. That's a great team to watch. You have anything else you were saying on that?
Yeah.
So the team that I'm actually watching, I just did mention them, is the LSU Tigers. This is a team that did make it to the Super Regional last year. They have a new coach, the addition of Jacob Berry, who a lot of people do consider as the best player in college baseball. Had a heck of a weekend. I mean, just a strong bat. And LSU, it puts up a lot of runs. They're a fun team to watch. So if you are wanting some high octane baseball, LSU could be that team for you. I mean, just this past weekend was opening weekend, by the way, and upsets galore. I mean, within the top 10, we had 2 top 10 teams lose series to either a low-ranked team or an unranked team. Defending national champ Mississippi State lost their series 2-1 to 24th ranked at the time, who are now ranked 12th, who probably the nation's favorite team at this point, the Long Beach State Dirtbags. Yes, that's their name, the Dirtbags. So Mississippi State at the Dude, they lost 2-1 to start the season. And the first game, it was pretty close, but that second game, they lost 13-3. Mississippi State is replacing quite a bit, but their offense just looked anemic this past weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can rebound from that. Then you also had Florida, who lost their opening series to unranked Liberty. Liberty had probably by far one of the catch of the year candidates early on. So that was an interesting series to follow along with as well. And then East Carolina, who was, right up there, always in the conversation last year, started off the season ranked 12th. They got swept by unranked Bryant. So that was one of the bigger shockers of the weekend as well. But yeah, lots of really good, fun baseball is happening. They play most of their games Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then there are sometimes midweek games. I know there's quite a few games going on today, and there's a few going on tomorrow as well. So if you need to get your baseball fix, the SEC network is always going to show you some really good college baseball. I mean, the SEC is probably the premier conference for baseball. If you're a Big Ten fan, I'm sorry. There's only one ranked Big Ten team, and that's Maryland, and no Big Ten team started the preseason ranked. That's just how it is. But SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, those are really where your big contenders are at. One team that's definitely out and showing really well offensively right now is NC State. So that's really it. I mean, really any of these top 10 teams, you just can't go wrong with. We did have a really good top 10 series between Oklahoma State and Vanderbilt, which Oklahoma State went into Nashville and beat the Commodores 2-1. So you're starting to see some of the teams that have the rich tradition, like Oklahoma State kind of had a down year last year, but now they're definitely back into the conversation. So it's really good to see them back up there. But then a lot of the teams that you saw emerge last year as well are right there. So it's definitely going to be a very exciting season. Definitely a good way to get your fix for baseball.
Yeah, and so before we wrap up here, we're gonna go ahead and give our championship predictions. For me, I'm just gonna keep it boring. Like, why wouldn't I with my championship predictions? I mean, I picked Kyle Larson to win the NASCAR title. I picked Scott Dixon to win the IndyCar title. So we're just gonna stick with it. We're gonna go with Texas. They return a lot of talent from their College World Series run last season. They have one of the best pitching staffs, and I mean, whenever you have one of the best pitching staffs, I mean, I know that there's a little bit more offense a lot more offense in college baseball than there is in MLB. But at the same time, I feel like, especially in a postseason, in a playoff setting, having the better pitching does pay dividends. And also, I mean, heck, the Big 12 in Texas hasn't really hasn't been a champion since 2005. The Big 12 has a big drought. Texas, I mean, the same year. I mean, Texas is the last team from the Big 12 to win the championship. Mm-hmm. So I'm going with the Longhorns. I think they get it done this year. Now, I don't. It's kind of I know probably I don't know the last time a team went like post to post, but which I don't think will necessarily happen. But I think Texas is going to get it done this year.
Yeah, I mean, they looked really good this past weekend against Rice, so that's a good pick. I mean, it's so hard to say because even going into Omaha last year, I don't think I would have said Mississippi State was going to walk out of there as the national champs.
Right.
Because really, you have the regular season, and then regionals and super regionals are a gauntlet. And then it's like the whole season resets once you get to Omaha. I'm not going to make a pick. Just I have to recuse myself as someone that covers this.
Right.
But I will say I did mention a couple teams to look out for. Like I said, LSU is one of those teams. Definitely watch them. Texas, like you said, they made it there last year. So I think they have what it takes to get back there and push even further. But you always have to be on the lookout for these teams that just come out of nowhere. I mean, Virginia last year was a little bit of a surprise. NC State upsetting Arkansas last year in Arkansas in the super regionals. That was definitely a surprise. So there's those teams some of these teams that you think like, oh yeah, they're definitely making it. And it ends up being a crapshoot. So like your pick of Texas is a really good pick. Arizona, like you said earlier, is another one to really keep an eye on. LSU is another one. Really, I think in the end, like after one weekend, it's tough to really measure. Like, is East Carolina a team that got swept by Bryant, or is East Carolina a team that could potentially push to host a regional or a super regional? So that's what you're looking at. Like Dallas Baptist last year made a strong run. Some teams that are going to start off really strong are going to fade significantly. Another team like to keep an eye on that they got bit by the injury bug last year a little bit, and then they got healthy near the postseason, not fully. But Ole Miss, that's another team to keep an eye on. So it's going to be a fun season, and it's going to have your opportunity to watch a lot of really good baseball, and I'll see a lot of the future for Major League Baseball as well. Yeah, I know people are like, yeah, but they use middle bats. It's just not the same. Yeah, it's different, but hey, it makes a cool sound.
It does.
Ping.
I do like, yeah. I mean, ping. Look, the crack of the bat and the ping.
I'm sorry, but when somebody really gets into it, when they really get into the ball, it is not a ping. It is it's a crack.
Yeah. I mean, both sounds are great for different reasons. I mean, I love.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see players. I mean, the web gems are unbelievable in college baseball. I mean, it's fun. So, I know a lot of people are saying they wish ESPN would fill their time slots that they have for Major League Baseball with college baseball right now, just so they would have the ability to watch more. So that would be nice. But
yeah, I noticed a lot of it's on ESPN Plus, which I'm kind of bummed out about.
Yeah, SEC Network typically has a bunch. Yeah, but that's just Yeah, I do wish that ESPN would change it up a little bit and fill those time slots that Major League Baseball was going to be in.
Right.
But instead, they'll probably air an extra LeBron James game with the Lakers that nobody cares to see.
Right, exactly. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Remember that you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. You can follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. You can go to our TikTok and YouTube channel, 3C Media, over there, where you can see a lot of great content. Thank you guys all for your support on those different channels. Also, remember you can watch us live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. That's where you can interact with us in the chat. And then remember that you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be found. You can find the Crash Course Podcast. Also remember that the Hoosier High School Huddle is coming up on Friday, so make sure you guys are locked into that. Same type of deal, 3C Media, everywhere podcasts can be heard. Make sure you guys are locked in. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me at Brandon_Scott87.
Next week, we will be talking about a lot of great things. The USFL draft was tonight. Maybe we'll get into that. It'll be a lot of fun. But until then, have a good night.
I'll let you lead the conversation on that one, Bart.
Have a good night, everybody.